Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Slcmof, and I'm back again with another video, and in this one I want to talk about the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, which I did recently, so you just want to give my review on it, but also just talk about kind of other films and, I guess the decision of WB to release this movie as 2.5 hours, and just my thoughts on the Ultimate Edition as a whole, and that kind of thing. So more holistic review, rather than just like a review of just this movie, you know what I'm saying? So anyway, let's talk about it a little bit. So Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, let's start with the film first. I really enjoyed this. I saw it a few days ago, and I thoroughly enjoyed it when I saw it. At the same point, I am in I admit, a minority of people that feels as though the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition is a masterpiece. A masterpiece. I'm not, exaggerating. I feel as though it is a brilliant film. It's one of the best films I've ever seen. It's in my top 5 favorites of all time. I love it thoroughly. I believe the script is genius. I think Chris Terrio's a genius. And the film has a certain depth and insightfulness to it that is unparalleled in superhero film. It's the most kind of gritty and weightful film that we've had since The Dark Knight, and that's one of my favorite films of all time. The first big Batman movie that I saw, you can see with all the pushes in the back, and let's see, wrong way, you can see my Batman v Superman score in the back there, right by underneath the loot crate. I've got a poster right there, I've got a poster right there. My room is riddled with Batman v Superman and The Dark Knight posters. These are my 2 favorite superhero movies of all time. Actually, The Dark Knight Rises is like one of my favorite. I really love that movie. I think it's extremely underrated. Anyway, not the topic of this video. So I want to specifically talk about, Batman v Superman and what this Ultimate Edition does. And personally, again, as someone that views the core movie that was in theaters as a masterpiece and nothing short of it, this didn't, it didn't blow my mind. At the same point, the scenes, like I've seen the movie 7 times in theater, so I can kind of recognize what's new and what's not specifically, and even lines. What really impressed me is there were specific lines that were included that I found kind of thinking back at, like, how did they cut this? How did they cut this movie? Because there's like a little line in the middle where Lex is talking to Senator Finch. And they're talking about, like, because she's from Kentucky, and they're talking about the line before, Kentucky Mash. My dad said the secret to health was Kentucky Mash. I know almost every line of this movie. I really shouldn't, but anyway. So the film, it adds to it. It adds a certain depth. As Zack Snyder explained, it's a deeper dive into that world. But at the same point, I'm kind of puzzled by the fact that they didn't release it in theaters, but at the same point I understand, because the theatrical cut in itself is a great film, and I guess the shorter the better. Maybe in terms of like casual audiences that can't sit through it. Like, I know my father, who has basically OCD, he would never sit through a movie that's 3 hours long. He has trouble sitting through an hour and a half Adam Sandler movies, and that's why he doesn't really watch movies. But anyway, that's kind of the audience that they're thinking about. They're thinking about that 65-year-old grandma who's getting in for a little bit more than they're bargaining for. But I will say this. Here's what I'll say. Is that if you look at the top 4 grossing films of all time, adjusted for inflation, and that includes Titanic and Gone with the Wind, I believe is what it is. That movie, I looked it up. It's almost 4 hours long, and adjusted for inflation, because that movie came out in like 1902 or something. Not literally. I think it came out in the 1920s or 30s. Anyway, that is the top grossing film adjusted for inflation of all time. That's 4 hours long. And Titanic from James Cameron, that's over 3 hours long. That's the 4th highest grossing film of all time, adjusted for inflation. And then another top 4 is Avatar, which is nearly 3 hours. And then the second one in there, I cannot remember, but that one's also longer than 3 hours. So the point is, in case you haven't picked up on my drift, is that there's a certain magic to having lengthy films. And in every way, they could have turned Batman v Superman into more than just another blockbuster. They could have turned it into more than just another movie. And it was marketed as such. It was marketed as just another superhero movie, except it's Batman and Superman fighting. But to other audiences, that's just, I thought it was going to be more impactful than it was. Going back to my dad and I were talking about it. My dad was like, Batman versus Superman on the big screen, fighting one another. I mean, this was months and months before, probably in August of 2015. This is going to be the biggest movie ever. And I said, absolutely it is. It is going to be the biggest movie ever. It is Batman fighting Superman on the big screen. It's going to be the biggest movie ever. It's going to make Avatar. It's going to make Titanic. It's going to make Star Wars look like jokes. And it didn't happen. And I feel as though they could have made it happen if they turned it into what I would call an event film. I don't know, film terminology, but that's what I'll call it. And an event film is, it has a certain magic to it, a pulling power to bring people to the theater. And so, if they made this, like, it's a 3-hour ordeal. It's not just another movie. It's not just another superhero film that's a little longer than most other films, but at the same point, it's just heroes fighting and people fighting. It's 3 hours. It's lengthy. It's depthful, and it's different than other superhero movies. And they could have made it this whole big thing. It's 3 hours long. It's lengthy. It's the event to bring your kids to. It's the event to bring, mom and dad to. I feel as though that would have been the best course of action rather than doing this 2.5-hour deal. And the fact of it is, you can't compete with Civil War in that 2.5-hour time frame, because let's face it, they're basically the same movie. The plot's exactly the same. Kevin Feige even admitted that the only reason Civil War exists is a direct copy of Batman v Superman, and even then the plots are pretty much replicated. The Batman v Superman script was done a year before Civil War was, so we know which copied which. I won't say copied, but some striking plot point similarities, let's say. When I was watching Civil War and we were in the UN building, I was like, oh yeah, this is definitely not going to blow up. Definitely not going to blow up. And of course it blew up. So, there's a lot of, again, striking similarities. I need not indicate a causality in these similarities, but I will say there is most certainly a correlation between the fact that they indicated that the movie only exists because Batman v Superman, and it's basically a copy. I'll just go ahead and say it. Okay. But the biggest difference is is tonally, and whereas the Dark Knight too, but also this film, Batman v Superman, is insightful, it's political, it's depthful, and it has a certain level of intellect behind it. I feel as though it certainly does. A film like Civil War has a certain level of irreverence, a certain hollowness to it, and to me a pointlessness, because the movie ends where it begins. That's honestly a fact. Nothing happens in the film, and the plot points do not progress that of which is the premise. Now, certain individual characters have plot progressions. For example, Bucky and Black Panther do. For example, Iron Man and Captain America do. But as per Team Cap versus Team Iron Man, this is Civil War. War. There's no war in the film, and the film just feels hollow and empty and pointless in a strange way, because of the fact that the movie doesn't get good until the third act. And again, it certainly is, in every way, and I need not say this lightly, it is a situational comedy. It's a sitcom film. They use the atmosphere, they use the setup of heroes fighting. You got Spider-Man in the mix and Ant-Man fighting. They use that as a setting to implement children's comedy and slapstick comedy. Certain things in the airport scene were funny, admittedly, but honestly, I don't know. I guess I just have a different taste in film. I prefer films to have depth, to have kind of thought behind them. And, what I think of a good film is if I think about it a lot after I leave. And that's one of the reasons I love Christopher Nolan movies, but they don't have to be brain teasers. If I'm just thinking about the movie, I'm thinking about what's talked about and some of the big ideas of the film afterwards, then I think that's a good movie. That kind of, my money of the film transcends what I just saw. It goes beyond that. And Civil War is the definition of a brain-dead movie. I mean, there's no drama in the film until the third act. Again, it's just hollow and bland and boring. And that's... I don't know why I'm saying this. Like, I lost so many subscribers. I got so much hate when I was talking about Civil War. That's just my honest opinion, though. I mean, I thoroughly respect all of your opinions of, and people have told me time and time again that BvS is a horrible movie, and I respect your opinion. I don't agree with it. But, it's totally preference. It's totally preference. And, I've enjoyed irreverent movies. I just watched Independence Day 2 and thought it was great. But when you go into a movie expecting, based upon the trailers and just as a fan of comic books as I am, I was expecting, the story to, I guess, have meaning or plot, and it didn't have that. It was very hollow, shall we say. The point is, the Ultimate Edition only extends upon this. It makes the film better, most certainly. However, if I were to show it to a casual family member, I would still show the theatrical cut, because once again, the theatrical cut isn't terrible. And again, I'm kind of puzzled by, I see on Twitter, it's like, theatrical cut, 5 out of 10. Ultimate Edition, 9.5. It's like, it's the same movie. Come on, people. It's the same movie. Honestly, like, okay, you see Superman fly into a missile in Africa. You see Ben Affleck butt naked. Okay, what does this, I'm being kind of very simplistic. It adds a lot to it. I get it. It adds to the film. It's great. It's awesome. The Ultimate Edition's great, and from now on, I'll watch that more than I will the theatrical cut, because I've seen the theatrical cut like 7 times, and overall, I'll just be watching the Ultimate Edition from now on. It is a deeper dive into that world. That's what Zack Snyder quoted when promoting the film. That's exactly what it is. It's a deeper dive into the world. You get a full way, and one of the things I thought that BvS lacked, if anything, was world building, and we get that more. We get to see, you know, the police officers before they go into the place where I don't mean to be kind of offensive, but like the Chinese or, you know, Asian girls, whatever, in the cellar, they're getting raped by that bad guy or whatever, that Batman brands, that building. Before then, we see them, they're watching you know, Metropolis versus Gotham City in a football match, and you also see a full shot of the city with Ace Chemicals and everything. Like, that's the money shot to me, and we never really got that. We didn't get the world building that I wanted. In fact, like, all the cinematic world shots of Metropolis and Gotham were honestly in the Turkish Airlines promotional pictures and in the teaser trailer like a year and a half ago. But anyway, that's just my thoughts. I loved the Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, love the theatrical cut, and, you know, overall, I would just say that maybe they should consider making a 3-hour Justice League movie. This is Justice League coming to the big screen. Either that or Zack Snyder needs to learn to make 2.5-hour movies, because time and time again, he makes these 3-hour movies and has to just destroy them on the editing room. I mean, you're literally cutting a sixth of a movie out. It's challenging. It's hard to do. And, you know, what he did is he cut little things from each scene. He cut 2 lines from each scene is basically what he did. And a few whole scenes, but not much. He cut like 1 roll, Jenna Malone's roll, and that's just 3 minutes. The majority of the cutting is in you know, individual scenes and snippets of lines, and that's tough to do. And I don't think that they should have to go through that pain again. So I think that they should do a big kind of, again, what I would call an event film, much like Titanic was in 1997. It's just a big deal. It's a 3-hour big movie. You bring everybody out to the theater. It's an event. You're seeing the Justice League assemble for the first time on the big screen. That's my word of advice. Of course, they don't ask me, but that's just my personal opinion of what they should do, and I would love to see a 3-hour Justice League film, and maybe they can release a 3.5-hour Ultimate Edition digitally or in Blu-ray, whatever. So anyway, guys, hope you all did enjoy the video, and hopefully you all are still here through my Civil War rant. I know, again, I'm in the minority of that, but I respect everybody's opinion on that, and hopefully you can mine as well. Hope you guys have enjoyed the video. If you did, feel free to give it a thumbs up, and subscribe for all Batman v Superman and superhero video game content. We'll see you in the next one.